Welcome everyone. It is 3 p.m. and it's time for the Server Room Show. This is episode 44. Today I want to talk about one of my other favorite firewall, not pfSense this time. pfSense I did make an episode quite early on the history of this show, so you can revert back to everything about pfSense. I said there it still stands. It's quite a famous episode, a lot of listening I got on that one. But today I want to mention the other firewall I always go to when I decide not to go with pfSense. It's a Sophos XG Firewall, the next gen firewall. I really like it. One of the reasons that they have a home version, a home edition, mostly limited to 4 cores and 6 gigabytes of RAM. It doesn't matter, your computer can have more than that, but it will only access that much. It's a software appliance which you can install either on a virtual machine or a dedicated PC or small server, and you can take advantage of your network card and the CPU and the RAM, and even with the home edition you can run a pretty full-fledged firewall for your own home. It contains I think much more features than other brands' free offering, so to say. Their website, the sophos.com website, there is a tons of information there. I went through it when I was preparing this episode. I remember that it used to be easier to find a comparison what is included in the home edition and what doesn't. Before, when it was called UTM, Sophos UTM, and then they renamed it Sophos XG. Now the website, at least for me, seems a tiny bit chaotic. I understand that they try to transmit a lot of information and as much as they just can to give you all you want to know about this product. But honestly, I have to say it's too much, and sometimes it's a bit hard to find the relevant information you're probably looking for. So maybe they should look into this. But first, what's a next-gen firewall? How it's different from, you will see in a second, from traditional firewall or firewalls. Next generation firewall is a part of the third generation of firewall technology, combining the traditional firewall with other network device filtering functions, such as an application firewall using inline deep packet inspection, DPI, an intrusion prevention system, IPS. Other techniques might also be employed, such as TLS and SSL encrypted traffic inspection. For example, like the ones when you browse to a website which has HTTPS in front, that uses encrypted traffic and communication. And you should use most of the time, all the time when you can, HTTPS instead of normal HTTP. Also, a next-gen firewall would have website filtering, quality of service, and other bandwidth management tools. Also, antivirus inspection and third-party identity management integration, such as the likes of LDAP or Radius Server or Active Directory to know, to identify the users and the computers which you want to allow to roam on your network. So how a next generation firewall is different from a traditional firewall? Next gen firewalls include the typical functions of traditional firewalls, such as packet filtering, network and port address translation in the form of NAT, stateful inspection, and virtual private network VPN support. The goal of a next gen firewall is to include more layers of the OSI model, improving filtering of network traffic that is dependent on the packet contents. Next-gen firewalls perform deeper inspection compared to stateful inspection performed by the first and second generation firewalls. Next-gen firewalls use a more thorough inspection style, checking packet payloads and matching signatures for harmful activities such as exploitable attacks and malware. Evolution of the next generation firewalls: improved detection of encrypted applications and intrusion prevention service. Modern threats like web-based malware attacks, targeted attacks, application layer attacks, and more have had a significant negative effect on the threat landscape. In fact, more than 80% of all new malware and intrusion attempts are exploiting weaknesses in applications, as opposed to weaknesses in networking components and services. This, as a side note, explains why even Microsoft recommends to run Windows Server. They used to call it Windows Nano Server, to use, for example, Windows Server without the GUI, the graphical user interface, because honestly, when less things you have, like the graphical user interface and those applications, the less weaknesses you put out there for people to try to break in and attack. And also in the case of Windows, it's if you compare the number of updates required for a server application with the graphic user interface versus the nano server kind of Windows server, it can be as much as up to 40 reboots for an update in a year, in a calendar year, for updates when you run your Windows Server, in this case with GUI, versus around 7 or 8 reboots for updates purposes in a calendar year when you're running your server in this kind of like a headless, without a graphical user environment. And as you see, next generation firewalls include these extra layers to try to protect the exploitation of these weaknesses in applications, in graphical user interfaces, and so on. So you know by now that the best to use and run Linux and BSD servers, and you're not gonna have problems. But there are still servers out there running Microsoft Windows for various reasons, but I think the trend is changing. Stateful firewalls with simple packet filtering capabilities were efficient, blocking unwanted applications, as most applications met the port protocol expectations. Administrators could promptly prevent an unsafe application from being accessed by users by simply just blocking the associated ports and protocols. But blocking a web application that uses, for example, port 80 by closing the port would also mean complications, as you know, with the entire HTTP protocol, so no Facebook and Instagram web browsing for you. Protection based on ports, protocols, IP addresses is no more reliable and viable. This has led to the development of identity-based security approach, which takes organizations a step ahead of conventional security appliances, which bind security to IP addresses. Next-gen firewalls offer administrators a deeper awareness of and control over individual applications, along with deeper inspection capabilities by the firewall. Administrators can create very granular allow and deny rules for controlling use of websites and applications in the network. And that's where Sophos XG Firewall product comes in. Sophos Firewall offering or product exists both as a software and a hardware offering. You can run the engine on a virtual machine or a hardware of your choice, but you can also choose to go with their own hardware firewalls, which uses tried and tested components to make sure you get the most out of their firewall engine. And as you will see further down in this episode, they are, as much as I saw the prices, if you don't go too crazy with what you want, you can get something more than enough for a home or a small business even, for around 5 to 6, 700 euros. Dollars, US dollars, what I saw the prices for a small desktop size firewall with I think graciously enough performance and throughput even on VPN and firewall rules being applied. Sophos claims that XG Firewall to be the world's best in visibility, protection and response, and their product is NSS brand recommended, which is there is a company called NSS Labs. What they do is they test security products from around the world. As far as I saw, pretty much only security products regarding NSS Labs. That's what they test, and they NSS brand recommended Sophos XG Firewall. Also, Gartner and SEO Awards spoke highly of Sophos products. Sophos offers it as an ultimate firewall solution, their words. They claim enterprise protection, where visibility, protection and response is key. And as they say, it's true, the best protection is to stop those unknown threats dead on spot. They have IPS, intrusion prevention system, as I mentioned, with high performance to try and stop unknown threats. They integrate it with something they call Sophos Lab Threat Intelligence Integration, where they analyzing and trying to stop these zero-day threats before they get onto your network, trying to give you performance to fully protect your environment. Their hardware appliances, these XG series appliances, they are the latest multi-core CPUs are in them. They are quite generous in the amount of RAM they use. Only solid-state drives are used, as it's pretty much de facto standard for today. So you can expect this proven performance from this Sophos hardware if you decide to go with that. They have, I did mention that one of the next-gen firewalls role or function is this TLS and encrypted traffic inspection. The thing is that 80% of the traffic which passing through your firewall or my firewall, most of the firewalls is encrypted traffic, and most organizations are completely blind to this traffic. They don't know what's happening inside. And why? Because TLS inspection kills their firewall performance. But Sophos claims that that's not the case anymore, because the XG firewalls extreme TLS inspection, as they marketed or labeled this function, they claim to solve this problem once and for all, and you can now fully enable TLS inspection without compromising on performance, protection, privacy and end user experience. They natively support TLS 1.3 and all the modern Cypher suites. They have powerful policy tools to balance privacy, protection and performance, and they have this unique at-a-glance visibility and the one-click error handling via their single pane of glass control center. And it's true that in the past, at least, the moment you were trying to decrypt this kind of encrypted traffic I just mentioned, the firewall performance suddenly went down a black hole. So it is true what they say, that most of the companies switched this function off or never turned this function on, because they bought a firewall what they could afford as per their budget, but they checked on the numbers and throughput based on normal firewall performance, and not on what performance it can give me when I turn on this encryption and decrypting any encrypted traffic. And the ones who look at my screen now can see that just as a quick glance, even in the smaller desktop models of physical XG Sophos hardware based firewalls, a smaller one of the smallest one, nearly one step up from the smaller one, it does great performance. Even with IPsec VPN, it does 330 megabit per sec. Normal firewall throughput is 3.55 gigabit per sec. And even if you turn on extreme SSL decryption, it goes to 75 megabit per sec. Now you might say, oh, 75 megabit per sec, and we have, like for example, me too, we have up to 600 megabit and even gigabit internet at our homes. And that is true that we have that, but we always forget that internet for the home and internet for a small company or even an office building is not the same thing. Can you run a business or an office on a gaming router of ASUS? Yeah, you can. Should you run a professional business and office through an ASUS gaming router? No, you should not. And also the network speeds in those kind of settings, it's still not rare to see that they offer 100 megabit dedicated fiber synchronous lines for business purposes. And the price for those, I actually had a chance to get some offers, because I had to check. In Spain right now, in the capital, an office building which has connection with various providers for dedicated fiber internet connection, running straight point to point from the office to the data center of the provider. 100 megabit speed, 99.999 uptime minimum, 4 hours time to repair, response time, 24/7 support, all the good things. They charge for those around 400 euros plus VAT or taxes, like you say. So in the light of this information, that it's not rare to run companies on 100 megabit lines, or I even saw backup lines for a company as being a backup line of 50 megabit. In the light of this information, the performance of the firewall, for example, a small business and branch office firewall I mentioned, with those numbers I would say it's pretty impressive, because never try to purchase a firewall for a business looking at the internet speeds you can get at home, because I don't know, I'm sure there are businesses with dedicated leased lines, as they also call it sometimes, dedicated leased lines, internet connections with up to a gigabit speed, but I think the rest of the world is just not there yet. So in the light of this information, these numbers are pretty nice. What else Sophos XG Firewall claims to be good in is software-defined WAN evolved. They claim that it's a unique capability that provides unprecedented clarity and control over your connectivity needs when it comes to software-defined WAN. There is gonna be a separate episode on this software-defined networking. I wanna do one on those. Also, flexible connectivity options. No other firewall offers as many modular and flexible connectivity solutions as XG firewalls, the physical ones. They can go from a full range of wireless modules to cellular, copper and fiber options. And they have powerful management and seamless scalability, which is important. You can use group firewall management to manage more than one of your firewalls, centralized firewall reporting, and pretty much claims plug-and-play high availability. It's designed to fit your network. It's powerful and modular line of hardware, and these appliances, just as well as in the software and virtual offerings. And cloud deployment is also an option. I did tell you about the XG series appliances, the physical ones. They, as I said, offers a full range of up to top performing hardware appliances with these modular connectivity options for LAN and WAN, including wireless and connections for even copper and fiber. There are really big ones, so you don't have to stick with a small desktop model. You can get a 2U rack mountable model with 100 gigabit per sec firewall performance, and even SSL TSL SSL decryption of 1.4 gigabit per sec. So if you want the biggest and the most powerful, you can. I mean, if you can afford. I wish I could, even though I don't need. I always forget that I don't need that much. I would like to have, but I don't need. Software, virtual and cloud. As I said, this XG firewall is also available as a software appliance. I said it in the very beginning, and I use it as personally. I use it in a form virtually. I use it on my virtual machines to give them. I use it as an edge firewall and router to give a way out and control what comes in and what goes out in my different subnets on running on either on Proxmox or ESXi or even just in VMware Workstation. Most of the time I have a main XG firewall sitting in a virtual machine which has a connection, has a LAN port, so to say, acts as a LAN gateway, better to say, acts as a LAN gateway for each of those virtual host-only networks or subnets I have, and I can treat my different subnets and different networks with those virtual machines in it exactly the way I want. I can let them communicate with other subnets, or I can deny them from doing such a thing. You can do a lot of fun with these. So again, the hardware offerings. When I looked at the smallest one, I mean new equipment, it was around 500 US dollars, which I think that for me, the one with the 75 megabit per sec decryption performance and a normal throughput of next gen firewall throughput is 350 megabit per sec. So I think this is the smallest. This would do great in my home lab environment before my traffic hits the rest of the network and goes out to the internet. And for the home, based on the internet I have, I said it's a 600 megabit per sec synchronous home one. The one I saw was I think up to $1,000 US dollars, and XG 125, which I could even get with wireless included. However, I love my Ubiquiti gear. I wouldn't replace those access points. this XG125 for around like $1,000 and a bit US. It does next gen firewall performance of 1.1 gigabit per sec. So I think for me, for the home, it would be more than enough, and it even would give me eight ports to play with, and even has an SFP port and the optional wireless, like I said, and expansion bay. So, and like I mentioned before, if you wanna go even beyond and get some 2U rack mount or 1U rack mount unit, you can do so, if money is not a problem for you. These hardware appliances, all features supported on every XG1X models, and nearly all the features on the smallest XG86 one, the one which I mentioned was around like $500-600. That might not support all the features, but the moment you do a step up from the smallest model, you can be sure that all the features are supported. Every model available with optional integrated Wi-Fi 802.11ac, which I think it's quite generous. Second power supply as an option for all of the XG1X models. So again, from the moment you step up from the smallest desktop appliance, you can have a second power supply as an option, which is nice. I really think that more and more both firewalls and switches, not just the expensive ones, should think and offer this second power supply option, because it's definitely in a data center or a server room, it's important. Expansion bay, I mentioned on all XG125, 135 models. So you can put a 3G or a 4G module if you want. Optional second Wi-Fi radio module on the 135W wireless model, and the SFP port I mentioned for option DSL modem on all XG1.X appliances. I'm running out of time as always. In the show notes I included more information on Sophos' other product, which you can combine with the XG Firewall, and this product is called the Intercept X Endpoint Management and Endpoint Protection, because I mean, you know that the threats can only come from the outside, but can come from the inside within your environments. And if someone puts a compromised pen drive or something with I don't know, some malware and virus on it, just because a computer is inside your LAN network, it doesn't make it not being vulnerable for this kind of attacks, and it doesn't mean that you have to blindly trust 100% your own just because it's on your LAN side of the firewall. So this kind of endpoint management and endpoint protection, it has endpoint detection and response. It has anti-ransomware. It's trying to protect you from ransomware. It has these deep learning technologies to try to figure out what proactively and predictively try to figure out what's going on and try to catch never seen threats before, and exploit prevention and all these other kind of things. I didn't have time to talk about those, so you can go and read the show notes, as I know you probably always do. I know a black cat who is my number one listener from the very beginning. I know he always reads the show notes, so if a black cat can read the show notes, then please do so, because it takes time to prepare, and it's not just for me, it's most for you, so you can refer back to it, or even during when you listen to this, you can take this podcast like if it was an audiobook. You can also read what I'm talking about, and you can also enjoy just to listen to it. See you next Saturday, and have a nice rest of the day.